I didn't raise my voice when my parents told me they had sold my apartment. That was the part that confused them. My mother was laughing when she called. In the background, I could hear music, relatives talking, and the constant noise that had surrounded my sister's wedding planning for months. Best wedding gift ever, she said. My father laughed too. For a second, I honestly thought they were joking. Then my mother explained. They had finalized the sale, the apartment. My apartment, the one I'd bought 6 years earlier. The one I'd spent weekends renovating myself because I couldn't afford contractors. The one that represented every extra shift, every canceled vacation, every sacrifice I made while everyone else seemed to assume I would always be fine. My sister wanted her dream wedding. The budget had grown from something reasonable into something absurd: donor venue, destination photography, custom decorations. Luxury accommodations for guests. By the time my parents were finished explaining, nearly $100,000 had disappeared into a celebration that hadn't even happened yet. We knew you'd understand, my mother said. That sentence hurt more than the sale, not because it was cruel, because it was sincere. She genuinely believed I would understand because I always had. I understood when my father needed help with medical bills. I understood when my sister couldn't make rent. I understood when my parents refinanced their house and needed temporary support. I understood every time an emergency appeared. The problem was that after enough years, people stopped seeing sacrifice as generosity. They started seeing it as your purpose. I sat quietly at my kitchen table. My mother kept talking. My father added comments. Neither seemed worried about my reaction. The decision had already been made. The money had already been spent. The conversation felt less like a discussion and more like a notification. Finally, my father asked why I was so quiet. I looked out the window, then I said the only thing that came to mind. Check your mailbox. Silence. What? My mother asked. Just check your mailbox. Then I ended the call. The truth was that I had known this moment was coming, not the apartment sale, not the wedding, but the moment when my family would eventually discover what I had been carrying for them. 3 years earlier, my parents had fallen behind on payments connected to their property. A combination of bad refinancing decisions and growing debt had created a situation they didn't fully understand. The letters started arriving, then the warnings, then the legal notices. At first, I stepped in because I thought it would be temporary, a few months, maybe a year. Instead, I became invisible. Every month, I quietly made payments. Every month, the problem stayed buried. Whenever my parents talked about their finances, they spoke as though everything had somehow stabilized on its own. I corrected them once. Only once. My father had laughed. We always figure things out. After that, I stopped explaining. People rarely value burdens they never have to carry. 2 days after the phone call, they opened the mailbox. The foreclosure notice was impossible to ignore. Official letterhead, deadlines alms owed, legal language, consequences. For the first time, there was no daughter standing between them and reality. My phone started ringing within minutes. I didn't answer. Then came texts, confused, panicked, demanding explanation. Finally, my father sent one simple message. What is this? I waited until evening before responding. Then I called. Neither of them sounded like they had during the wedding announcement. No laughter, no celebration, just fear. My father asked whether the notice was real. Yes, my mother immediately asked why nobody had told them. I remember staring at the wall after she said that, not because I was angry, because I genuinely didn't know how to respond. Nobody had told them. For 3 years, I had been making payments. For 3 years, I had redirected money away from my own future. For 3 years, I had quietly protected them, and somehow they had never once wondered why the problem disappeared. Eventually, I explained everything: the monthly payments, the balances, the deadlines, the money, all of it. Neither of them interrupted. When I finished, there was a long silence. My father spoke first. You were paying that? Yes. Another silence. Then my mother asked the question I knew was coming. Can you keep helping until we figure something out? There it was, the familiar expectation, not gratitude. Not accountability, another request. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately. That instinct had been trained into me for years. Fix the problem, protect everyone, absorb the consequences, move on. But something felt different. Maybe it was losing the apartment. Maybe it was hearing them celebrate a sacrifice they never asked permission to make. Maybe I was simply tired. I can't keep doing this, I said quietly. My mother started crying. My father became defensive. The conversation moved in circles, excuses, regrets, blame, confusion. By the end, nobody felt better. Over the following months, reality arrived slowly. The wedding budget collapsed. Vendors were canceled. Plans changed. Assets were sold. Loans were renegotiated. For the first time, my parents had to manage the consequences themselves, not because I wanted them to suffer, because I was no longer willing to disappear. That distinction mattered. People imagine moments like this ending with dramatic apologies. Life rarely works that way. My sister was angry for a long time. My father alternated between guilt and resentment. My mother called more often than before, though many conversations felt careful, as if she were learning a language she should have understood years earlier. Respect, I discovered, does not always arrive as affection. Sometimes it arrives as hesitation, as people finally recognizing that your boundaries are real. A year later, the wedding photos were barely discussed. The apartment was gone. Some relationships remained strained, some never fully recovered, but for the first time in my adult life, every dollar I earned belonged to my future, not someone else's emergency, not someone else's expectation. Mine. There was no celebration, no victory speech, no perfect ending. Just a quiet realization that self-respect often feels less dramatic than revenge and far more difficult. I still love my family. I simply stopped confusing love with obligation. That was the change none of us could undo.